Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team. Let's go take a look.
Welcome back to the Rubin team. Today is Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone who celebrates. And if you don't, you should find somebody to do it with. I want you to meet my friend Danny Brown from Los Angeles at Compass. He's the head of the Luxury Estates division out there. Danny, how are things?
Things are great. It's no more floods and rains in LA. The sun's shining. And actually, I avoided it all. I was out in New York and Miami last week. So I was hearing about it and getting calls and texts from all the clients whose roofs were leaking and flooding was happening in the canyons. But I was unscathed. But I'm doing great. Good to see you, Josh.
Well, I'm glad that you got through it relatively unharmed. But I know that a lot of people out there were affected by it. There were some mudslides, and I was just reading an article about 3 homes that are dangling on a precipice on a cliff in Los Angeles. I don't know if it's in Los Angeles, but it's somewhere on the California coast. Looks like these things are about to fall into the sea.
Yeah, look, we got 6 months of rain in one day, and LA, specifically the whole Southern California area, really isn't really set up to handle the drainage that's needed. And there's so many canyons and the fires create mud and on and on and on. So it's sort of a, it's a mess, but it's sunny, the sun's shining again. And unfortunately, some people got their houses and stuff damaged.
Yeah. Well, that's what insurance is for. But I understand that the home insurance market in California is an issue in and of itself.
Yeah, they just keep shooting us in the foot. We've had an issue with fire insurance over the last couple of years, and we got to the point where it's very, very difficult to get your high-end homes insured, and it's extremely expensive. And the same thing happened years ago after the earthquakes, and we'll see now after the floods if anything happens. My guess is with the floods, there weren't that many properties impacted, so it's probably not going to have any sort of insurance effect. But this fire insurance situation is a bitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the U.S. government has to come up with some solution there. So
you would think so. You would think so, because people want to insure these homes, and that's one of the reasons why our market, the luxury high-end market in LA last year, just got battered. Not only was the interest rates, we also had that ULA mansion tax, which was 5.5% over 10 million. I know you guys have something similar. And then the fire insurance. It was like the trifecta.
It's a mansion tax, and I think that Los Angeles County enacted it last year. Was it June of last year?
April of last year, the market went off a cliff. It was a surge of $10 million sales in March to get in the deadline, and then it just went off a cliff.
Wow. And you think it was really this UAL tax that you're calling it, right?
Well, I mean, look, that was a huge factor. It was 5.5% over $10 million. It was 4% over 5 million. And it was for commercial and residential property. It was all property. So we had an interest rate situation, which already derailed the market. And then the ULA tax really just compounded it. And then we had some fire insurance issues that are really acutely impacting high-end homes, because California Fair Plan and other carriers were only covering so much of the house. So when you get to these estate level 20 million and up homes, they weren't being covered. So the combination of all those things and the uncertainty just in the capital markets and geopolitical scene really just crushed our high-end market. Just looking at some statistics. I mean, depending on what micro market you're in, like Beverly Hills, for instance, volume was down almost 70%. Brentwood as well. So well over 50% in terms of transaction volume at the high end went down. The starting, the lower entry points didn't get impacted nearly as much as the ULA impacted homes, which is the first tranche was 5 million. And then when you get to 10 million and up, it's the 5.5% tranche. So I mean, that's what happened last year. And now when the interest rates went down a little bit towards the end of the fourth quarter, we saw a spike, and we've had a spike in January. So we're hoping that, this continues through February. Our peak selling season really starts now, right after the Super Bowl, obviously, which was just happened. So that's when our beginning of our spring season usually starts. And here through June is when we really know what the market's doing. So ask me in another 60 days and I'll give you a much better answer about what's going on in LA.
It's interesting because back in June of 2019, we saw something similar where the mansion tax went up, which historically has been 1% on transactions at or above $1 million just across the board. However, in April of 2019, the state legislature enacted a graduated schedule. So it goes from 1% all the way up to 3.5%. So if you're buying a place for $20 million, then you have the pleasure of paying an additional $750,000 just in a mansion tax.
Yes.
And that's basically for the right to buy this property in New York State. You have to pay this additional, essentially it's a VIG. So it's
correct.
And what that did is it basically motivated buyers who were sitting on the fence when that law was passed in April. So then in May, there was this sudden surge of activity in that luxury market because people didn't want to have to pay essentially triple the mansion tax if they did not close by June 30th.
Yeah, we had a similar surge, except ours was up to 5.5%. So, on a $10 million sale, you got 550,000, and on a 20, it's over $1 million. And then you add the 5% for broker fees. Now you want to go sell your $10 million house in Brentwood, and you got to pay $1.5 million right off the top in broker and taxes before anything. So of course it impacts the market.
But was this levied by Los Angeles County?
Actually, city of LA, not the entire county. So okay. Yeah, so Beverly Hills doesn't have it. Santa Monica enacted their own version because that's a separate city. But it's over 8 million. It doesn't hit till 8 million. So there's very few homes in Santa Monica compared to LA that are over 8 million. But the similar high tax, I think they're 5.5% too. But LA, Beverly Hills didn't enact it, and West Hollywood did not enact it. It's just the city of LA, but that covers Brentwood, Bel Air, Pacific Palisades, Hancock Park, a lot of Los Feliz, a lot of high end areas, and so it covers a lot of ground. But we'll see what happens this year. We've already had more sales in January and the beginning of February than we had been having in the last back half of last year. So hopefully that's a sign of good things to come. And I think people are baking in that the Fed will cut the rate a few times and that's on the horizon. So I think that gives buyers more confidence. And I also think sellers, had a reality check over the last 18 months, and the ones that want to sell are doing what they need to do in terms of pricing it realistically instead of aspirational pricing, which we've been seeing throughout that frothy market for the last several years. So that's gone. That doesn't work.
Hey, it's interesting, Danny, you mentioned that the Fed is expected to cut rates a few times this year, but recent economic indicators, including this morning's inflation report, seem to indicate otherwise. And the Fed is saying, hey, there's no assurance that we're actually going to go through with this, and we have to keep our eye on the numbers. We're ready to push the button on this. But at the end of the day, recent indicators are that the Fed is not going to be doing so as quickly as we originally anticipated in that fourth quarter when the 10-year came off and we all saw that uptick in activity and equities hit all-time highs. So, I'm looking at the reports right now. Just the Russell 2000 is down almost 3% today alone. And so I think that people are, starting to take that wait and see attitude a little bit more. And of course, at the end of this year, we're going to see the election. So a lot of attention is going to be turning toward that. So, there's this book called The 12-Week Year. And this is really a story of the, 6-month year in our market, where I think all the activity that we do is going to be in that front half. So it'll be interesting to see how things unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. No one has any idea. Correct. They've definitely dialed back their dialogue in terms of what the Fed is expecting to do. We were at first last year at the end hoping it was going to be more aggressive cuts. Now they're backing off that. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah. So Danny, take us back. I know you've been in the business for a long time. You've done some notable sales, but what was it that made you get into the business?
What did I get in the business? It was by accident, I think. When I got in the business, it was 2001. I was initially in the music business right out of school. I was interning and promoting bands and DJing at events and this and that. So I went in the music business, which is a really tough business. And that was the beginning of Napster and online music. And so after like 3, 4, 5 years grinding out as mailroom and intern and assistant and just getting my teeth kicked in, I had one of my best friends at the time who worked for top guy in North America, a guy named David Offer. So my best friend, David Ravitz, still works for him. They've been partners now 30 years. And I'm like, you guys are killing it. I'll just get into real estate like you, and I'll make some money on the side part-time, and then I'll fund it into the bands, because I was starting to manage my own bands, and I was starting to get a little interest and starting to shop them to labels. So I thought this was perfect. And his response back then, and we crack up about it today, was do not get into this business thinking it's easy money. That's the last thing. You need to have your steel cup on every day. You're going to have nothing but rejection and disappointments. It's like, but if you did get in it and go all in, you'll be great at it. It's what you've done your whole life, people person, negotiation. You like being creative and market. But man, it is not easy. And 22, 23 years later, I would still say, this business is not easy. What you see on TV is not our business. There's a whole TV culture that's a different world. That's 10 people in the world that are in that business. The rest of us in the real estate business, man, termites, toilets, mold, it's not so glamorous. It's a lot of pain and a lot of disappointments and no guarantee.
No, for sure. They say that the rent is due every day, and they're not kidding. We have to get out and get at it, and we can't really count our chickens until they're hatched. I mean, especially in my business with co-ops and whimsical board approvals, and you never know.
Those are brutal. The co-ops are brutal. We don't have to deal with that, but that's like impossible.
Yeah, but you have your own challenges. I mean, what are some deals that stand out to you that you've done where there are these seemingly insurmountable challenges that up until that point you thought you had seen it all, and then this?
I mean, candidly, that happens quite often. Even thousands of transactions, however many years later, you get into situations like, are you serious? I haven't seen this one. The curveballs keep coming. It's in real estate, the analogy to baseball is like 2-0 fast. You're sitting fastball, but in real estate, you're getting a hard slider. You're getting a split finger. You're never getting it down the high over the zone fastball to hit 2-0, 3-1. So I had situations where the typical situation is the challenge around pricing, right? Where sellers like, I gotta sell it now. We gotta get rid of it, but I want this price. I'm like, well, there's no price anywhere close to that. And the dance between reality and seller expectation and demands is always challenging. I've had some high profile stuff where you got the business manager and attorney saying you got to show the house, you got to get it sold. And every time you get a showing request, you can't get in the house because, it's an actress or it's an actor or it's a whatever, rock star. And they can't, like, they're sleeping till 3, or they just have stuff going on. There's things in the house. They just don't want to let you in. I'm like, how am I going to sell this house if we can never get in? So that's another thing. There's so many things. There's so many difficult issues. Had foreign issues where the client decides to travel and they go off the grid, where there is no U.S. embassy within hours, and we're closing and everyone's wondering what's going on, and you can't get the signature because they're off the grid in Nepal or God knows where they went, and good luck trying to track them down, and you're doing everything you can. You're calling the CIA trying to figure out, how do I track someone down and deep in Afghanistan woods to sign this document. So I've had those sort of situations. Every time it's different, and it's not always high profile situations too. I mean, there was situations I had where I did a favor of a friend, and it was in the hood. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. It's a good friend who said he needed help. And man, there was these pit bulls in the house. Oh, geez. So, and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. The pit bulls they're good with people. Don't worry about it. Man,
Yeah.
they are not good with people. I went once. My sister went a couple times, and we're like, we're not going anymore. There's pit bulls. We thought we were gonna get eaten up by the pit bull. There was like 3 or 4 pit bulls. They were not nice pit bulls. Let's put it
No.
that way.
No, I mean dogs naturally are very territorial, and pit
I
bulls
love
especially.
dogs. I love dogs, but pit bulls that are angry, and you're in South Central, and the property is like, it's not a house that's good. You're basically doing it for free, and you're risking your life.
Yeah. I had a deal a couple of years ago where a guy called me up. He had been receiving my postcards for a number of years, and he wanted to meet because he needed to get his affairs in order. And he had been diagnosed recently with cancer. And so I went over and I met him and his assistant. His apartment was a little ramshackle, but, I sat down and got to know him. And he actually signed with me right there at the time of the meeting.
Huh,
and he said he didn't look like he had gone through any treatment or anything. He looked kind of like you and I, but he had this diagnosis, and he was given a certain amount of time to get his affairs in order. So he signed on with me, and he said, okay, let's touch base in a couple days. 2-3 days go by, and I called him and left a message. And then a day or so later, I get a call from his assistant. And she had been working with him for many years, both in a corporate setting, and then when he retired, he had her come work with him outside of the corporate world. And she was in tears because she had known this guy for so long, and he was in the hospital, and he wasn't expected to leave. And so, I said, okay, just let me know if there's anything we can do. We're happy to move as, at your pace, just keep us posted. And so we then ended up putting the apartment on the market, and we sold it. However, in the process, he passed away. And so the attorney and I were sort of at this crossroads because turned out that he was married to another woman who was not in the picture, but she was literally on some shaman mission in the Amazon.
Great.
And we were trying to track her down, and she hadn't spoken to this guy in some time, and he was sort of at odds with her. And it was one of the strangest experiences of my life. We literally had to track this woman down in the Amazonian jungle.
Yeah.
And we had to get her to, a consulate and sign some documents. And the next thing you know, she pops up here, and there was like this, are we selling this apartment? Are we not? We finally got it done, but it was, each one of these experiences is like a lesson in and of itself, where you're constantly learning and experiencing new things. And it's not just a matter of how much is this apartment? Let's get it in shape to show, let's sell it. It's a lot of emotion, a lot of psychology that goes into it. So like you said, it's never straight down the middle.
It never is. And when you come up with these curveballs in the Amazonians or the Afghanistan or whatever, you better hope you have the right quarterback on your team, because as when everything goes right and it's smooth, anyone could sell any property. But 99.9% of our colleagues, when it's curveballs and issues and bumps, they're not ready. They're not, what do they call them, war generals? Guys like us are war generals. We can adapt, we can pivot and deal. We've seen it all. So when new stuff comes at us, we know how to attack it. But that's really not the case. And the consumers really just don't get that. They think they don't value so much what we do. They think it's, ooh, find me a property, or wow, you have a relationship, you got me in the door. That's part of it. That's sort of just the entry fee. The real stuff is what happens when shit goes wrong. Excuse my French. I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. And so many people think that I can just go online and find the property and go to it and negotiate it and, put the deal together. And I know the lenders and I know the attorneys and the inspectors, and everything's going to go perfectly. And, it's like when you're a passenger in a plane and all of a sudden you hit that turbulence and you're like, geez, I hope this guy knows what he's doing. Because if he doesn't, we're all screwed. I mean, you heard about this unfortunate accident last week or the week before with, I think it was a Chinook helicopter going from Nevada to San Diego, and they flew through weather, and this guy didn't have the chops to be flying, in those conditions, and they didn't make it. And God forbid you should be working with an agent who's just, oh, he's my friend from school and he just got into the business, and you're trying to give him the opportunity, and you run into, rough weather in the transaction. And, there's really no way that you can sort of self-correct once you're there, in the foxhole with this person who really should not be next to you in that foxhole.
Yeah. And the analogy I use, and that's a good one that Jet, I always say, if your life's on the line, you need a heart surgery. Are you going to go to Cedars-Sinai in Beverly Hills or the best surgeon in Manhattan? Or are you going to go drive across the border, go to Mexico and Tijuana because they can do it for, 20% of the cost? And, God knows who you're getting. And if they've even done a heart surgery before, you might get someone who's done a nose surgery and he's going to now do heart surgery. So yeah, these analogies come up a lot. And I think, the overall mainstream consumer doesn't get that. Interestingly enough, my most savvy clients, family offices, people that are on the Fortune 500 list, certainly business managers and attorneys, they get it and that's why they hire me, is like they get that. Like, okay, it's cheap insurance to pay a commission, but oftentimes it's the people that really don't know are the ones that don't think they need an agent. They're the ones that probably need the agent the most. But it's partly on us to train the consumers, and partly we have such a low barrier of entry in our industry. There's a lot of non-professional agents, majority, and so we get that sort of bad name and that the perception of like, oh, agents don't add value. They're just they're not doing much, because that's 99% of us. There aren't, but the ones that are good are really valuable.
No, that's right. And that's why a lot of our business is referral based, because people recognize the value and the experience. And we really do,
For sure.
Bring that to the relationships that we have and the transactions that we work on.
100%. But, enough of a plug of the real estate industry. What else can we get into? Let's talk. It's Valentine's Day today, right?
Exactly. It's Valentine's Day today. It's
talk about love and good stuff, fun stuff.
It's one of those Hallmark holidays, and definitely need to send my wife some flowers at some point. Maybe get her some chocolate.
I did. I'm out of the doghouse for now. 24 hours.
But Danny, I know that some recent transactions include the Brady Bunch house. Tell us about that.
Oh wow, I mean, that is not normal. So the Brady Bunch house never existed when they did the show The Brady Bunch. So the Brady Bunch, with Sherman Schwartz was the creator. This was in the late 60s, early 70s. He asked his studio execs to go find what would look like a middle-class family architect's home, someone who's an architect. They went around the valley near the studio in Studio City. They found this average, typical mid-century type of home, and they used it at the beginning of the credits of the show. The actual show was shot at Paramount on studios on sets. So the inside of the house and everything we know about the Brady Bunch house, it wasn't a real house. The outside and the credits was real. So for the last 30 or 40 years, the family that lived in that house in a very middle class, not fancy neighborhood, would have all day long, literally, people coming and taking pictures. You sit outside that house all day long. People will show up with costumes. People will be dancing. This is before it became transformed into the real Brady Bunch house. So 7-8 years ago, I can't remember the exact time, this family decides, hey, we're going to sell this house. And basically it's a teardown if it wasn't known to be the Brady Bunch house.
Yeah.
My clients and 30 other people wanted to buy this house. Celebrities, investors, this and that. And my client, it's public info, so I can say it was HGTV. And they basically said, we got to have this. We have a plan. We're going to make a show around it. We have all these ancillary businesses and events we can do. So when it got down to it, it was a major bidding war. And Lance Bass, the boy band Lance Bass, God bless him. He's a sweet, very cool, smart guy. I like him a lot. Yeah. Very friendly with him. So he announces on Instagram.
This is Lance Bass, the astronaut.
No, not Lance Bass, the astronaut.
Google that.
The pop star.
Google it.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's right. Yes. He did go up in space. That's right. That's right. Lance Bass, the astronaut, and boy band superstar, global pop icon. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it comes down to I'm negotiating with the seller and this and that. Next thing I know, I get a call from my office. They're like, Lance Bass is celebrating that he got the house. He's with friends on Instagram and he's celebrating. We got it. I'm like, how could this be possible? I'm still on the phone. I'm like talking. So I call. It was Ernie Carswell, who was the listing agent at Douglas Elliman. You're not. Were you with Douglas Elliman or Sotheby's?
I'm still at Douglas Elliman.
You are Douglas. So Ernie Carswell is, iconic agent, big time guy, great guy, really, really top guy and great agent. I call him like, what the F's going on here? We just talked 5 minutes ago and you said it worse. He's like, I know. He shouldn't have said that. And I said, well, look, here's the offer. We're going to pay X amount over whatever Lance pays. And it was a significant amount over. And I get on with the studio head who's on his plane and he's like flying into, I don't know, Jackson Hole or Aspen. And he's like, go higher. And I got Ernie, we're going higher. And he's like, but Lance is celebrating. So Ernie's like, oh man, okay, I got to break this news to Lance that, he's not going to be able to compete. And I'm like, good. So I get the call back. A few minutes later, Ernie talks to him and he's like, okay, Lance is so pissed, but you guys have to deal. There's no question about it. So that's how we got the deal. But the better story is what they did with the house. They basically left the facade and they built it into a 5,000 square foot house. The house was like 2,000 feet when it was originally built. And they got all these all-star designers and builders and contractors, the Property Brothers. And if you Google it on HGTV, it will detail who was involved. And they built it exactly like the set looked. So when you walked into that house, it took them like 2 years or a year and a half to do it. You feel like you're in the real Brady Bunch house. And it looks like the Brady Bunch house. Every little inch. They got every frame of film and matched every color and every texture, even the little tchotchkes, everything. It's unbelievable. So if you go to YouTube or go online, you can find the house. So last year, and we got it sold, and the buyer was a home collector. She said maybe she'll have an event, a nonprofit event there once or twice a year. She just bought it to be a collector. She buys interesting properties, and she felt she had to buy it, and that's what happened. So I'm no longer involved, although I do still get calls from investors that say, hey, do you think she'll sell the house? Do you think she would want to sell it? So once in a while I have those conversations. At this point, she's holding. So that's the Brady Bunch story. Yeah,
that's remarkable. So what did HGTV pay for the house when they bought it?
Okay, that's a good question. I got to go back into the catalog here. They paid a lot. So put it this way: if it was just a house that was not known to be the Brady Bunch house, it was probably worth about $2 million at the time. I think we paid, I want to say 3.5.
Wow.
It was 27 offers. I mean, it was 27 offers. So my guess, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think there was like the last 5 people were at 3 million and, we didn't want to lose it. And we went to 3.2 or 3.5 or something like I think 3.5.
You paid approximately 70% above what you objectively felt the market value was without the Brady Bunch affiliation.
Correct, because if anyone else would have been a builder who would have torn it down and built a brand new house. That's what they would have done in that neighborhood. But yes, so they bought it, and their view was, and the studio's views, and all their advisors, like, hey, look, we're not worried about the real estate. We're gonna, we can lose money on the real estate, but they didn't want to lose money on the real estate. But they're like, we're going to make shows, we're going to do events. So they did that. They did a whole show around rebuilding it, and they had all these star cast members. They brought the Brady Bunch cast back. And, they did all these events there, and, they made money there doing other things. So the interesting part was when it came to selling, they said, well, what do we price this as? And we went through the same thing. Now, this house really isn't livable. I mean, like, there's certain things about the house that aren't real. I mean, who's going to live in that house? I mean, everyone looked at it as an investment, an Airbnb. And, oh, by the way, Airbnbs are illegal in LA. So good luck, trying to have the Brady Bunch Airbnb. You're going to be sticking out and you're going to have so much attention. So it was a hard thing to sell. So at first they were like, well, why don't we just ask $10 million? I'm like, $10 million. And again, I said, if this was like now, if this wasn't the Brady Bunch house and this was just like even a livable house, it's probably worth 2.5, maybe 3, maybe 3 at max. It's not really livable. So basically we got a bunch of lowball offers from investors. We went on the market at 5.5 because that's what they think they put into the house.
Okay.
But the house was never worth more than 3. And
right.
they knew that, and I knew that, and we did our best, and we ended up selling it. It's public information. We sold it for 3.2. So they lost a good amount of money on the real estate, but they made a ton of money, and net did very well with the exposure and the promotion and the advertising and sponsorships and TV shows and all that stuff.
Right. So, I mean, it's kind of like the Jesus commercials on the Super Bowl, right? I mean, Jesus needed more branding.
Yes.
It makes sense. I saw a meme the other day. You might have seen it as well, and it has Jesus in front of his followers, and he said, I would be feeding you all. However, I had to spend $14 million on Super Bowl commercials.
Right.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But as for the Super Bowl, it was a pretty remarkable game competitively.
Incredible.
And I was surprised that the Chiefs kind of wilted under pressure in the first half. They came alive in the second half. I still thought that the 49ers had it.
They did, but you can never
out. I mean, Mahomes had a minute and a half to make a drive. Obviously they came from behind and won it all. What was your most memorable Super Bowl ad?
My most memorable Super Bowl. Oh God, because I've watched all of them. I don't think I've missed them. All I know is recently we've had a lot of good games. I mean, this Super Bowl was remarkable that it came down to the last drive. I love that the Patriots Seahawks game that came down to the last play, and then the Seahawks try to pass the ball from the 1 yard line rather than run it in when they have the best running back in the NFL. That was another. I like seeing close games. So those are some memorables. I'm trying to think of what else. I loved the John Elway when I was younger, when he finally won a Super Bowl and scored a couple touchdowns. He was at the end of his career. I was like, yeah, goddamn, good for him. I'd say now the most memorable is 28-3. The Falcons are leading the Patriots, and here comes Tom Brady in the second half. Impossible. Mathematically, the calculus is impossible for him to come back. And somehow he willed his team. That was the most remarkable game I can never think of. I mean, that there was no way that they should have won that game, but Tom Brady, that's why he's the GOAT. Although Patrick Mahomes is certainly looking like he's ready to fill those shoes because he's pulling the same stuff off.
It's true. Similar trajectory. I think Mahomes is I think we'll see 3 out of him, no doubt, at some point. But let me ask you, you also coach games, right?
Oh, well, coach, yes. I mean, if you ask me, I'm a full-time coach is what my wife tells me. Yes, I coach my kids all the time. I coach baseball and football. And that's my dad therapy. That's my everything. I love it. I have a 13-year-old who just had a bar mitzvah, mazel tov. And I have an 11-year-old boy. And then I have a 9-year-old daughter who's a different species from those savages. But the baseball, the football, it's unbelievable. We just won the football championship. And then they had me coach the all-star team, and we won the LA City championship as well. I love it. I played a lot of sports growing up. That was my thing, and I'm like living through my kids again, and what a blessing that is. So I love it. Love to compete.
Danny, tell me about the All-Star game, because that brings kids from all over the city, right?
Oh yeah. So for sure, you're playing the best of the best. It's flag football. It's not tackle, but we play the flag football they play in LA City. In this LA City League, it's 7-on-7, and it's full blocking, full contact. It's not this NFL flag football that most of the kids play now, but it's fantastic. So they have, you play all over. The Valley has a champion, the West Side, which we were, has a champion, South Central has a champion, East Side, East LA has a champion, and everyone meets. So we just did very well. We did well. So it's awesome. You get to play kids from all over, and very competitive and so much fun. And that was a good run. And then baseball, Little League baseball is a blast. We just started. We have our first game tonight, so
cool.
We'll see how that goes, or tomorrow night actually.
And so your daughter is the youngest. She's 9.
My daughter's the youngest, and she's playing sports too, softball, and she's doing dance. They won her first dance competition down in Disneyland last weekend. Yeah, and her middle brother, was cheering her on. She's cheered on enough baseball and football games that he was returning the favor. But she's actually a very good athlete too, and plays softball and
Now, does she want to get on the field with the football as well?
No, and I'm not encouraging it. It's bad enough that I have the boys playing football, and that's a whole conversation. This is the gateway. Someone said the flag football is the gateway drug to real football, and they're right. And I remember trying to pester my parents to play Pop Warner football growing up, and they were like, "No, only flag." But by the time I got to high school, they were like, "All right." At that point, they didn't have they weren't really aware of the concussion protocol. They were just aware that, hey, you're going to get banged up and probably end up with some sort of surgery. And they were right. I ended up pretty much ending my sports career playing football in high school. I blew out my knee, and it hurt my recruiting for college. And I ended up playing in college, but only baseball, no football, because that was it. After the knee injury, I figured I probably shouldn't test my luck.
Yeah. So what'd you do, an ACL or?
Yeah. Blew out ACL, meniscus, the whole deal, senior year. Football, and that was it. It was and then it killed me because baseball season was next, and I was highly recruited until that, and then I wasn't.
Well, it reminds me of the story of the Yankees in I think it was the late '90s, but it could have been 2000 or early 2000s, when Aaron Boone, the now manager, was a star player for them, and he was playing pickup baseball. Pickup basketball.
Yep.
And he blew out his knee.
Booney, what a schmuck. He's a buddy of mine from high school, from college. We played together at USC.
Right.
We were on the same team together. He's hilarious, great guy.
Yeah, but he blew out his knee, and there went his season.
Yeah, and those are mega $1 million contracts. Can you imagine what the ownership was thinking?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but he was probably just thinking like, oh, it couldn't happen to me, and lo and behold, it did.
Yeah, you're having a workout, you're having fun, you're competing. Yeah, it could happen. It could happen.
Yeah.
And it does.
So you went to USC, and so you grew up out there in LA.
Yeah, look, I'm one of the few born and raised in LA. I never went far because of sports and other things. I ended up staying locally, and ended up at USC. And then, as I said, I wanted to pursue the entertainment music business. So that kept me in LA. And I never left. So, I'm one of the few that have been here a long time. And, it would have been fun to go away to college looking back at it. That's something I missed out on. But I love LA. I love the lifestyle. I love to surf. I love to ski. I love the weather. I love being outdoors, sport, being able to play sports year round. So, I love it. And, there's certain things I love about other places. And I love spending time in New York and, Miami and Dallas, and other places, Aspen, but LA is home. It's hard to beat, even with all the issues and all the taxes and all the crap that we deal with. It's still hard to beat.
Yeah. I'm surprised, given your experience in sports and athletics, that you didn't actually go into management on that side. Is that something that you ever considered doing?
100%. And I think the reason why I didn't was that I was just so crushed and heartbroken. You spend 22 years, or as long as since you're little, with one goal in mind, to be a professional athlete. And when it all ends, it's traumatic. So I think that was part of it. I wanted to get away from the game, and it took me a long time to sort of recover from that and get away from it. But I was actually, when I first stopped playing, I was interning at a great company. That was Beverly Hills Sports Council. They're the biggest baseball agents still, or they were certainly then. Back then they had Barry Bonds and Canseco and on and on and on. Still huge. So I was interning there and on my way to being a baseball agent, but I just was like, I just didn't want to be around sports anymore. And I really loved I thought music business was a good idea. Schmuck that I was, what an idiot. So I did that. And then years later, segued into real estate, and real estate took off, and I never looked back. So, but yes, now I think, wow, it would have been great to go into coaching, but back then, as a young guy, coaches don't make any money when they start out. And you certainly wasn't thinking ahead far enough to say, well, if I stick with this coaching for 10 years, then you could get a very high paying job in college, and who knows where we go. But yeah, and I think about that now. That probably would be my dream job, to be coaching at college somewhere and recruiting. I love that, the whole recruiting process. So that would have been a fun in the next life, perhaps. Or maybe I'll retire. If the market disappears, I'll retire and I'll start a new career coaching.
Yeah.
For now, I got little league and flag football, so that's not bad.
Yeah, I always tell people that if the market dries up, then I'll consider being a taxi driver. So
Uber, baby.
Uber, or just a yellow taxi.
Old school taxi.
Yeah. I mean, pre-Uber, I used to meet so many characters in those taxis. I'm not talking about the passengers. I'm talking about the drivers.
Yeah.
And the best was sometimes you'd get into a yellow taxi that didn't have the partition.
Yeah.
And it was just like a normal car. Yeah. And those were the guys that had been doing it the longest. And it was actually, they owned the car and the medallion, and they were kind of just driving for fun. And they had so many stories to tell about all the different people they made. I drove Elvis once. One time I drove Frank Sinatra. One time Mayor Koch needed a ride. So it's you just meet so many different people.
Characters.
And, but given your experience and with the people that you've known from LA growing up there, obviously you have this huge network of different people in different walks of life, from your friend with the pit bulls in South Central to the Brady Bunch and the head of HGTV. So I mean,
yeah, it's kind of abnormal. I know.
It kind of runs the gamut, right? And that's kind of similar to me in that I'll help you sell your $500,000 apartment. I'll help you find an apartment for your daughter just coming out of school. But I'll also sell your $20 million penthouse too. And so I think that's what really makes us so successful, and that we're not just uber focused on the luxury market, but we'll do sort of everything, because it's really just about helping people at the end of the day. But I mean, how did you sort of really kind of leapfrog into just being this guy who says, oh, maybe I'll give real estate a shot. And then, next thing you know, you're selling the Brady Bunch house for HGTV, you're representing them on the buy and then the subsequent sale. And then you've handled a lot of celebrity transactions as well.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of time that went into it before. It wasn't just like I got in and now I'm doing it. In fact, it was, I grinded. I mean, my first few years in real estate, I would go get deals in, Granada Hills, Canoga Park, Mount Washington. I'm talking about areas of LA that growing up in LA, I did not even know how to get there. And back then we had the Thomas Guide. We didn't have Google Maps. So I would just spend weekends or free times. I didn't have clients, driving around. If someone says, oh, I have someone's cousin's friend wants to buy a $200,000 condo in Valley Village. I didn't know where. We're like, all right, I'll just start Valley Village, driving around, look at every property, get educated. Now I know Valley Village enough to speak intelligently. So I built things block by block. By no means did I jump in and start selling high-end property. And, I felt like it took probably a decade to even start breaking into anything but sort of entry level. And, and then step by step, block by block, started breaking into it. And, one leads to the next and one leads to the next. And it's all referral. And, that's how it's built over many years. But boy, I certainly didn't have a quick trajectory to the top of the market. And I still look at it even 3 years later. I'm looking at Drew Fenton and Mauricio and, a few of these other guys that are, Tomer, who's next door to my office, that, they have 40, the Altmans, they have 40 or 50 listings that are $30 million. So for them, those $30 million listings don't even mean anything to them. It's like me selling a $50,000, trailer. So yeah. I'm still looking at the level that I'm not at, right? There's that rarefied air level where very few people are there. And granted, some of them, it's all TV related and you can't get there without the TV. Although a few people have, like a Drew Fenton and a David Offer, certain Brandon and Rainey Williams. So it took years. It was a slow progression. It took years, and I always put the client first. I always did the right thing, I said it takes 20 years to build your reputation, and it takes 30 seconds to ruin it. So that is the lens that I always work through. And I'm the first person to point out the negatives and the issues. And, I might lose deals that way, but I will build trust. And I just have to have faith that that trust will lead to future deals and referrals. And, I've always approached this as an advisory, brokerage, consultant, not as a sales agent. Even back then, that's just how I was trained and kind of how, that was my personality. And that's it. And so, I'm still, every day is still a battle, as you know. You have to put your steel cup on every morning, no matter how big you think you are. I mean, I try to have no ego, even though this is a business full of egos. I try to be egoless and really, you take the pain. I mean, last year was a tough year, for me. If it was a tough year for me, I can't imagine what it was for the average agent. And, I'm still always reaching, still always trying to get better, still try to stay open-minded to learn what I can, because there's always something new to learn. And, that's the beauty of this business. There's always something new to learn, and there's never a cap on how big you can build your business. It's all up to you and the real estate gods.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's very interesting, and it's also a very humbling business, right? You think you get to this level, and the next thing you're sort of scrapping and looking for the next opportunity, and you talk about that rarefied air, and really, so few of us get to taste that. But you got to work hard and really one relationship at a time, one transaction at a time. And I think that you pointed out something that was very astute, which is that it can take 30 years to build your career and reputation and 30 seconds to ruin it. So you really always have to put people first and focus on what's best for them, and think about kind of like you did with the HGTV and the Brady Bunch deal. Like, hey guys, what's your objective here? And if you're in it to make money on this particular transaction, this might not be the best fit for you. But from a branding perspective and the ancillary opportunities, obviously it turns into something else. But your focus on relationships has really, enabled you to achieve really great success that many never even get a taste of, let alone do on a relatively consistent basis. So I applaud that of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it is humbling. I mean, disappointments coming at you fast and furious every day. So you have to have such thick skin, and you have to have a short memory. And in a way, I feel like my baseball sports mentality mindset really prepared me, because there's so much failure in baseball, and you 70% of the time you're failing. If you hit 300 and you're an all-star, so the disappointments and the ups and downs, and you feel like you're in a slump, but if you focus on that you're in a slump, then you're going to sustain the slump. How do you act as if you're confident and have swagger when you really are slumping? All these things apply to business and life, and especially to real estate, where there is so much failure. How many times you meet someone, or you get a great lead or a great introduction, and you're like, oh, this is going to be amazing, and you put a ton of time in, or however much time and energy, and you do all the right things, and they decide that they're not going to buy or sell, or they buy with someone else, or someone else, they walk in an open house and like, oh, we didn't know, or they move and change their plans or whatever. So it's like you're constantly, you got to stay level, even keel. You can't go up and down, but we're humans. So obviously our emotions are always pulling us one way or the other, and our mind's got to try to keep us in a bracketed between some sort of functional level of emotional stability. Otherwise, you're going to lose your mind. I mean,
right.
Especially in a normal market, like we've all had that decade plus of, a frothy market that wasn't normal. It wasn't sustainable. Yeah. And many agents, that's all they know. But when you get into a normal market, which is kind of what we're in now, for LA at least, it's still a pretty healthy market, and prices are stabilized and things are so it's just normal. But compared to what it was, there's a lot more rejection, a lot more disappointment, and a lot more nuances, and a lot more emotional intelligence needed, and a lot more psychology, that you need to deal with clients' emotions. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, which is may only be worth about 1 penny.
Well, we'll see. I think it all depends on what happens with the market, but at the end of the day, you're clearly, well versed in the business, and you have a good perspective and philosophy on things. So it's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on the Rubin Special. Of course, would love to return the favor at some point. And
I'd love to have you on my podcast, The Deal with Danny Brown. You can check it out as well on all podcast formats and all that. I'd love to have you. It's great to connect with you. And next time I'm in New York or you're in LA, let's get a meal and
we'd love that. Absolutely. My treat to cats is pastrami.
Oh, I'm in. I love it. Happy Valentine's, everybody. Especially
Happy
my
Valentine's
wife.
Day, especially to everyone that I love near and far. Danny Brown, the man, the myth, the legend from Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us today on the Rubin Special. We hope to see you soon.
Only in my own mind, but that's fine. I'll take it. Hey, good to see you, brother. I appreciate it.
You too, man.
Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team.